everyone! So I got rid of my Surface Go a while back in favor of an iPad Pro. This is the base model iPad Pro with an 11-inch display and 64 GB of storage. Also, it only has Wi-Fi and not cellular. I've been using it for around a month now. I usually use it to take notes in class and for media consumption. So let's get started! On the back, we see the familiar yet quite large Apple logo alongside the rear camera and the flash. There's a camera bump, which could be a problem if you're taking notes without using a case. Earlier generation iPads didn't have this bump, so I was surprised when I saw it. My Surface Go didn't have this bump either. As you can see, it also doesn't have a built-in stand. The back is all metal, which in my opinion means that it's less prone to scratches than the plastic used on Surface Go and Surface Pro. On the sides, you have the volume up and down buttons, the lock button, a USB-C port, as well as the smart keyboard interface. It also has a quad speaker setup that I'll talk about in a bit. In front, you get the screen with thin bezels, and the front camera setup that also supports Face ID. What you don't have, however, is a home button. When Apple first released this iPad Pro without a home button, I was honestly skeptical about the lack of it. In my opinion, the build quality is pretty good, but I've seen some bent iPad Pros online, so take this with a grain of salt. It's not a bad idea to get Apple Care though, just in case. It has an Apple A12X Bionic chip, which is an improved version of the A12 Bionic chip that can be found on the iPhone XS and the XR. It also has 4 GB of RAM and an 8000 mAh battery. My iPad was shipped with iOS 12.4, so I experienced that before upgrading to iPadOS. Once you have an Apple device, it's very easy to set up another one. So I used my iPhone to set up my iPad, which took less than 5 minutes. Once the installation was done, I was ready to go. Using the iPad is just like using an iPhone, especially on iOS 12.4, as it's fundamentally the same layout. It was weird to see only 4 columns of apps on the home screen, even if the home screen is huge, and it was also weird to having to scroll to the left to see the Today page. iPadOS fortunately has brought a lot of new features. Firstly, in my opinion, the home screen is way better now, with more apps and the integrated Today screen. Drag and drop is significantly better, and the fact that Safari is in desktop mode by default makes it almost indistinguishable from a computer. And I mean it. It runs everything from Google Docs to WhatsApp Web with no problems. Face ID on this is better than any iPhone. It's truly amazing. It works at all angles and all orientations. It even works when you're holding the iPad upside down. It tells you where to look, and it even tells you when you're covering the camera. Truly amazing. Its cameras are not bad. It has a 7 megapixel front camera and a 12 megapixel rear one. I've seen the rumors about a dual camera or a triple camera iPad Pro setup, but we'll see that in 2020. The front camera is amazing for FaceTime calls, and the rear camera is not bad at all. I used this rear camera when I was shooting the iPhone 11 Pro Max video, and aside from having to refocus all the time, it was fine. The front camera shoots 1080p at 60 frames per second, while the rear camera shoots 4K at 60 frames per second. The front camera also has a portrait mode, and it works pretty well. The quad speaker setup is amazing. It's significantly better than my iPhone, and almost on par with my MacBook Pro. It also has 5 microphones for calls and video recording, which makes it an amazing FaceTime machine. Speaking of FaceTime, when you receive a call of any sort, the call screen is full screen. It's borderline acceptable on the iPhone, but it's unacceptable on such a large device like the iPad. I can't imagine seeing this on the larger model. Apple should come up with a design similar to the one in OS X. Some claim it's not as good as a computer, but once you start using it, you realize how fast it is. Imovie, although not as advanced as the OS X version, works amazingly well. Safari works well, and you can finally open 2 instances of the same app side by side. You can just drag a Safari tab to an edge and it'll open up as a separate instance. You can't even do that on OS X. It's also great for games. I'm not someone who games all the time, but I downloaded Asphalt 9 just to try it out, and honestly, I couldn't stop playing it. I haven't tried this, but you can also connect a PlayStation controller to it as well. First of all, the performance is amazing, and it takes advantage of the 120Hz screen. It doesn't have a built-in stand, but a $15 case solves that problem, and you can play games on it without actually having to hold it. Speaking of the high refresh rate screen, taking notes using the pen is amazing due to the virtually non-existent latency and the screen. After the Surface Go, it took me some time to get used to the pencil, as it's quite louder and there is no feedback from the pen, but once I got used to it, I couldn't go back to my Surface. There's also screen flex to a certain degree, but it doesn't bother me anymore. The second generation Apple Pencil is significantly better than the first one. It finally sticks to the side of the iPad and actually charges there. Unlike the first gen pencil, it doesn't come with a spare tip anymore though. It has a button on the flat side, and you can change what it does when you double click it. However, as a lefty, I realized that it keeps detecting false positives, especially when my hands get sweaty, so I had to turn it off. I might turn it back on, but I just find touching the eraser icon on OneNote easier. there is finally an easier way to take screenshots. I can now just drag the pencil from any bottom side to the middle, and the screenshot is right there, waiting for me to edit it. It also finally has external storage support. Unlike other iPads, it's easier to physically connect an external storage to this iPad Pro as it has USB-C instead of Lightning. As a MacBook owner, I have a dongle and it works perfectly fine with my iPad Pro. Moreover, I can use my dongle to connect to an external display as well. Once you connect an external storage, you can just go to Files and you'll see it there. Apps like Imovie and Microsoft Office Suite can directly import files from the external storage. Also, thanks to the new Safari Download Manager, you can now directly download files to the external storage. When I first read about Sidecar, I thought it was a gimmick. I thought it would be laggy and overall useless. But when I tried it, I was overblown. It works amazingly well, there is virtually no lag, and you even get your own touch bar for the iPad. Battery life is pretty good as well. After a day of courses and studying, I usually have 40 to 60% battery on the iPad Pro. This is pretty good, and I can charge it up using the 18 watt included charger as well, but the downside is that I can't use a regular power bank to charge it up. I'll probably need to invest in a USB-C power bank, but for now at least, the battery life is pretty good and I don't need to charge it up during the day. The new iPad Pro has a strong place between an iPhone and a MacBook Pro, and it can actually replace a computer for the most part. I can access the desktop version of pretty much all the websites using Safari, and it doesn't stutter at all even if I have more than 10 tabs open. It only has 4 gigs of RAM, but iPadOS or iOS does RAM management very well. iPadOS was definitely a big step towards the iPad being a true desktop replacement, but there are obviously places where it comes short, and one of them is coding. To this day, you pretty much need a computer to do any kind of coding, thus I still need to bring my computer to school with me. Aside from that, if you're already in the Apple ecosystem, it's an amazing device. I can send and receive iMessages as well as texts, I can make and receive phone calls, and I have access to my Siri shortcuts. I can copy something from my MacBook Pro and directly paste it on my iPad, and I can share files across all my devices using AirDrop. Is this convenient? Yes. Is this something I can't live without? Absolutely not, but it makes my life easier. Overall, in 2019, the iPad Pro is a great school companion, and I truly believe that it'll actually replace my laptop one day. But till then, I'll keep carrying my MacBook and my iPad in my backpack. Thank you so much for watching, please consider liking and subscribing, and I really hope I'll see you all next time.